If you think your roommate is not that bad, this video is about to humble you. These are 69 of the most ridiculous roommate and shared apartment complaints in America, from kitchen science experiments to living room dictators and people who treat the bathroom like a public park. By the end, you'll either feel blessed or you'll be packing. 1. Living with a musician is tough, but living with an aspiring drummer who cannot afford drums is a special kind of hell. One guy posted about his roommate who practiced his air drumming routines for 3 hours every single night. The problem wasn't the silence. It was the heavy breathing and the frantic tapping of pencils on every surface in the living room. When asked to stop, the roommate claimed he was in the pocket, and that interrupting his flow was basically a crime against art. 2. You expect some minor food theft in a shared apartment, but one tenant took it to a biological level. A woman complained that her new roommate would explicitly lick every single item she bought and put in the fridge. We are talking about licking apples, blocks of cheese, and even the rim of the milk carton while making intense eye contact. Her defense was that she was just building up her immune system and ensuring nobody else would want to steal her shared groceries. 3. Most people build forts out of pillows, but one Reddit user had a roommate who built them out of used toilet paper rolls. He refused to throw away the cardboard tubes because he was convinced they had acoustic value for soundproofing the bathroom. Within 2 months, the entire wall behind the toilet was stacked floor to ceiling with cardboard cylinders. He called it his sanctuary of silence, while everyone else just called it a massive fire hazard that smelled like damp cardboard. 4. There is always a war over the thermostat, but one guy in Florida was living with a human reptile. His roommate insisted on keeping the apartment at 85 degrees Fahrenheit because he claimed cold air made his thoughts slow down. The complainant would come home to find the roommate sitting in his underwear, sweating profusely while eating hot soup, claiming he was reaching peak cognitive performance. Meanwhile, the electric bill was high enough to buy a small island. 5. Finding a bug in the kitchen is gross, but being told the bug has a name is terrifying. A tenant in New York City raised a shoe to squash a massive cockroach when his roommate tackled him like it was a rescue mission. Turns out the roommate named the roach Gregory and treated him like a non-paying subtenant. He fed Gregory crumbs for weeks and swore the insect was emotional support after his breakup. 6. Passive-aggressive notes are a staple of shared living, but one girl took it too far by leaving notes on sleeping people. Her roommate woke up one morning to find a sticky note attached to her own forehead that just said, "You snore." The writer didn't stop there. She labeled the couch with instructions on how to sit correctly and put a "Do Not Touch" sign on the front door handle, which made leaving the apartment practically impossible without violating house rules. 7. It is annoying when a boyfriend stays over too much, but imagine coming home to find your roommate's mother wearing your bathrobe. One guy complained that his roommate invited his mom to stay for a weekend, which somehow turned into a 3-month residency. She reorganized the kitchen, criticized the guy's dating life, and started charging him $5 for every load of laundry she decided to do for him without asking. 8. Sleepwalking is a valid medical condition, but sleep rearranging is a nightmare to live with. A college student reported that 3 times a week, he would wake up to find all the living room furniture stacked in a pyramid in the center of the room. His roommate had zero memory of doing it and actually accused the complainant of playing pranks. It got so bad they had to bolt the sofa to the floor just to navigate the apartment in the morning. 9. Sharing is caring, unless it involves personal hygiene tools being used for housekeeping. A woman walked in on her roommate scrubbing the grout in the shower with a toothbrush. When she looked closer, she realized it was her expensive electric toothbrush. The roommate's defense was that the sonic vibrations were perfect for getting out mold, and she promised to rinse it off with hot water before putting it back on the charger. 10. We all want good vibes at home, but one roommate decided the apartment was haunted by the ghost of a Victorian child. To solve this, she performed a daily exorcism on the kitchen appliances. The complainant would try to make toast, only to be stopped because the toaster was currently being blessed with holy water and surrounded by a circle of salt. She claimed the burnt toast was actually the ghost trying to communicate from the other side. 11. The sound of 20 alarms blasting at 4 in the morning is not a wake-up call. It is psychological warfare. This guy possessed the magical ability to sleep through every single one, leaving them ringing for 45 minutes straight. I eventually had to march into his room and physically shake him awake just to make the noise stop. Instead of thanking me, he flew into a rage, threw a pillow, and screamed that I had ruined his waking up ritual. 12. Walking into the kitchen felt like entering a bad foam party because this genius decided that Dawn dish soap was the same as dishwasher detergent. The room was waist-deep in white bubbles, and he was standing in the center with a red Solo cup, frantically trying to scoop the suds into the sink. When I asked what he was doing, he looked me dead in the eye and asked if we could save the foam in buckets to wash the car later. 13. Taking out the garbage became a high-stakes game of trash Jenga because nobody wanted to walk to the dumpster. This guy would delicately balance pizza boxes, empty milk jugs, and banana peels until the pile was literally touching the kitchen ceiling light. When the tower finally collapsed and spilled coffee grounds everywhere, he refused to clean it up. He blamed flawed bag design, grabbed a controller, and went back to playing video games like nothing happened. 14. I learned to knock on my own front door because I was living with a nudist at heart. He refused to wear clothes in common areas, claiming that fabric suffocated his pores, so I would routinely find him eating cereal on the couch completely naked. His only compromise was sitting on a yellow towel, but since he never washed it, that piece of terry cloth became a biological hazard that marked his territory on every cushion. 15. At 3 in the morning, the entire apartment would shake with screams of, "Revive me, he is one shot." This guy got so immersed in Call of Duty that he started wearing a literal tactical vest and eating meals ready to eat while playing. It was not a game, it was a lifestyle. When I told him to hush, he whispered, "Enemy nearby," did a combat roll, and army crawled back into the darkness of his bedroom. 16. I walked home to find the bathroom door completely unscrewed from its hinges and leaning against the hallway wall. My roommate was sitting on the toilet in full view of the kitchen because he decided the small room had bad airflow and made him claustrophobic. He called it open concept pooping to help his chakras, while I called the landlord immediately because nobody needs to make eye contact while making an omelet. 17. A smell like rotting feet and vinegar led me to a secret fermentation lab hidden under his bed. He was brewing gallons of homemade kombucha in unsealed jars, but he messed up the carbonation levels. One night, the pressure got too high and a jar exploded, sending purple, vinegar-smelling slime soaking through the floorboards. It dripped right onto the neighbor's expensive rug downstairs, and we lost our security deposit in about 5 seconds. 18. Inventory management reached an IRS auditor level when she brought a black Sharpie into the kitchen. She wrote her initials on every individual egg and marked the milk level on the carton with a timestamp every time she used it. She even kept a digital scale on the counter to weigh her block of cheddar cheese. She knew exactly if you stole a single slice, and she would invoice you for the 25 cents. 19. Despite having a perfectly good bedroom with a mattress, this guy pitched a camping tent in the middle of the living room and slept there for 2 months. He claimed the energy in his actual room was stagnant, and he needed to be closer to the wireless router for better dreams. Guests had to awkwardly unzip his tent flap just to say hello or ask if he could move his campsite so we could watch TV. 20. This cheapskate refused to contribute a dime to the toilet paper fund and started improvising. I went to make my morning brew and found the coffee filter pack sitting on the bathroom counter next to the plunger. When confronted, he argued that they were basically the same material as toilet tissue. He completely ignored the fact that coffee filters are designed to hold boiling water and offer a terrifyingly abrasive exfoliation experience. 21. He borrowed my car keys from the kitchen counter for what he said was a quick errand. That errand turned into a 600-mile round trip to a music festival over the weekend. He returned the car with an empty gas tank and mud on the seats. Instead of apologizing, he tossed me a crumpled $5 bill and said, "Relax, I didn't even crash it, as if avoiding a felony was a favor he did for me. 22. She insisted on keeping 50 candles burning 24 hours a day to manifest wealth into the apartment. The place felt like a sauna, and the white ceiling was starting to turn black from constant soot. When I tried to blow them out to prevent a house fire, she screamed that extinguishing the flame would blow away the money, which ironically was all going straight to the candle store. 23. To save money on litter, he removed the litter box cold turkey to train his cat to use the human toilet. He forgot the actual training part, so the cat started using the bathtub as a personal sandbox. It smelled horrific, but he refused to clean it. He claimed the cat was making a statement and needed time to figure out basic plumbing before he could intervene. 24. The kitchen sink became a permanent science experiment because this guy believed in the power of soaking. He would leave a lasagna pan filled with water and soap for 6 weeks straight, claiming the crust needed to loosen up naturally. The water eventually turned a murky gray and started growing its own ecosystem of mold. When I finally poured it out, he got genuinely upset and told me I had interrupted the enzyme breakdown process right before it was finished. 25. Our electricity bill suddenly spiked to $400 a month because my roommate decided to turn his bedroom into a crypto mining farm. He had 6 high-powered graphic cards running 24 hours a day, which turned our apartment into a literal sauna. The fans were so loud it sounded like a jet engine was idling in the hallway. He promised to pay me back with his earnings, but so far he has only mined about 12 cents worth of Dogecoin. 26. You expect to smell coffee in the morning, not boiling soda. I walked into the kitchen to find a pot of black sludge bubbling on the stove. My roommate was attempting to create a Mountain Dew reduction sauce to glaze his chicken wings. The smell was a mix of burnt sugar and a toxic chemical cloud that lingered in the curtains for days. He insisted it was a delicacy in the South, but the ruined non-stick pan said otherwise. 27. Privacy is important, but this guy took it to a paranoid extreme by covering every single window in the apartment with aluminum foil. He claimed he was building a Faraday cage to block out 5G signals and government mind control rays. From the outside, our apartment looked like a giant baked potato or a very suspicious drug den. The lack of sunlight killed all my plants, but he said that was a small price to pay for mental purity. 28. I reached for my towel after a shower, only to find it damp and smelling like someone else's cheap cologne. It turned out my roommate didn't believe in personal ownership of linens and treated the bathroom like a communal spa. He was using my towel, my loofah, and even my razor. When I confronted him, he called me materialistic and said that sharing skin cells was a natural part of the bonding experience between men. 29. Most people use a phone alarm, but this guy decided to reconnect with nature by buying a literal rooster. He kept a live farm animal in a dog crate in his bedroom in the middle of downtown Chicago. The bird didn't wait for sunrise. It started screaming at 3 in the morning because of the streetlights outside. We got an eviction notice in 3 days, but he still argued that waking up to a natural crow was better for our circadian rhythms. 30. His girlfriend came over for a movie night and basically never left. It started with a toothbrush, then a drawer, and suddenly she was redecorating the living room and critiquing my cleaning habits. The breaking point was when she sat me down for a house meeting to discuss my attitude. I had to remind her that she wasn't on the lease, didn't pay rent, and technically didn't even have a key to the front door. 31. Coming home late at night became a dangerous obstacle course. My roommate was terrified of burglars, so he set up a janky Home Alone-style security system all over the hallway. I walked into it half asleep and got slammed by a loud cascade of junk that nearly took me out. He did not apologize for the bruise. He just nodded proudly and said the system worked because he heard it from his bedroom. 32. I opened the freezer to grab some ice cream and found a roadkill squirrel in a Ziploc bag right next to the frozen peas. My roommate was an amateur taxidermist who liked to collect specimens he found on the highway. He told me not to worry because the cold temperature would kill the bacteria. I ended up buying a mini fridge for my room because I couldn't handle the thought of my pizza rolls sitting next to a dead rodent. 33. A guy I lived with refused to buy a bed frame because he wanted to stay grounded to the earth. He slept on a bare mattress on the floor surrounded by piles of dirty laundry and empty takeout boxes. The problem was that the lack of airflow caused mold to grow underneath the mattress. When we moved it, there was a perfect black rectangle of fungus on the carpet that looked like a crime scene outline of his sleeping body. 34. Using the bathroom became a spectator sport because my roommate removed the lock on the door. He claimed that locks created barriers of trust and that we should all be comfortable with our natural functions. I learned to sing loudly whenever I went in there, just to warn him not to barge in. He eventually walked in on my visiting mother, and that was the day the lock went back on with a power drill. 35. Our third roommate vanished for weeks, but we kept hearing strange scratching noises coming from the walls. It turned out he hadn't moved out. He had just moved into the crawl space in the attic to save money on his share of the rent. We found him up there with a sleeping bag, a flashlight, and a bag of chips. He tried to argue that since he wasn't using the bedroom, he shouldn't have to pay for utilities. 36. A roll of blue painter's tape appeared on the floor one day, dividing the living room into two exact halves. My roommate was tired of my stuff migrating to his side, so he enforced a strict border patrol. If my shoe was 1 inch over the blue line, he would kick it back to my side. He even taped down the middle of the TV remote and said I could only press the buttons on the left side. 37. The sound of a commercial blender crushing ice at 2 in the morning became the soundtrack of my life. My roommate went on a liquid diet and decided that meal prep had to happen strictly in the middle of the night. He wasn't just blending fruit. He was pulverizing entire cooked steaks and potatoes into a brown sludge because he claimed chewing burned too many calories. The noise was bad, but watching him drink a liquefied ribeye was infinitely worse. 38. Saving water is noble, but this guy turned our bathroom into a biohazard zone. He enforced a strict, if it is yellow, let it mellow rule, but he took it to the extreme of only flushing once a week on Sunday nights. The bathroom permanently smelled like a rest stop urinal that hadn't been cleaned since the 90s. When I secretly flushed it on a Tuesday, he yelled at me for disrupting the fermentation cycle. 39. I woke up one night to see a silhouette standing in the corner of the living room and nearly had a heart attack. My roommate had started collecting discarded department store mannequins and arranging them around the apartment to make it feel less lonely. He would dress them in my clothes without asking and position them on the sofa like they were watching TV. Nothing wakes you up faster than thinking Plastic Patricia is an intruder. 40. Most people understand how refrigerators work, but this guy treated ours like a lamp. He started unplugging the fridge every night before bed to save 50 cents on electricity. He genuinely argued that food sleeps too and doesn't need to be cold when it is dark outside. I woke up to warm milk, spoiled yogurt, and a freezer full of melted ice cream soup that dripped all over the kitchen floor. 41. Breakfast became a therapy session I never signed up for. My roommate decided he was an unlicensed life coach and started narrating my morning routine. If I chose sugary cereal, he would sigh and ask what childhood trauma I was trying to suppress with marshmallows. He refused to just let me eat in peace. He claimed my choice of coffee mug revealed deep-seated abandonment issues that only he could help me resolve. 42. I found an empty glass terrarium in the living room with the lid wide open. When I asked about it, my roommate casually mentioned that his pet tarantula, Princess, had been missing for 3 days. He told me not to worry because she, usually, avoids human beds and only bites if she smells fear. I spent the next week sleeping in a zipped-up sleeping bag with duct tape around my ankles. 43. We agreed to split the utility bills, but I did not agree to live inside his bathtub greenhouse. I came home to find the tub packed with soil and tomato plants glowing under blinding purple LED lights. He even rigged the shower head into an automatic watering setup. When I said I needed a shower, he handed me a watering can and told me to use the kitchen sink because the tomatoes were in a delicate growth phase. 44. I walked into the living room to see my roommate wearing my favorite vintage hoodie. It had a very specific bleach stain on the sleeve that I made myself years ago. When I called him out, he looked me dead in the eye and said he bought the exact same one at a thrift store that morning. He committed to the lie so hard that he even pointed to the stain and called it a crazy coincidence. 45. Hygiene standards hit rock bottom when I found out why the water bill was so low. My roommate believed in communal bathing to save the planet. He would take a bath and then refuse to drain the water, insisting that the next person should use the same murky, lukewarm soup to get clean. He called it ancestral soaking, while I called it a guaranteed way to contract a skin infection. 46. Our downstairs neighbor started banging on the ceiling with a broom every single night. It turned out my roommate was wearing heavy Timberland boots inside the house and pacing back and forth for hours while on phone calls. He walked with such heavy feet that the light fixtures downstairs were rattling. When I asked him to wear socks, he said his feet needed the structural support of a construction boot to relax. 47. A strange couple knocked on our door on a Saturday morning with suitcases, asking where they should sleep. My roommate had listed his own bedroom on Airbnb for the weekend to make extra cash, but he hadn't actually left the apartment. He planned to sleep on the couch while total strangers used his room. I spent my weekend giving directions to confused tourists while he snored loudly in the common area 3 feet away. 48. I came home to find a wall of tuna cans stacked 5 feet high in the hallway. My roommate was an extreme couponer who couldn't resist a bulk deal. He had bought 600 cans of tuna because they were 10 cents each. The apartment looked like a doomsday bunker, and for the next 6 months, every single meal he cooked was some horrific variation of warm tuna casserole. 49. He decided that keys were too old-fashioned and replaced our front door lock with a smart system he coded himself. The problem was that the code was buggy, and it would only unlock if you smiled at the camera for 10 seconds while hopping on one foot. I once got locked out in the rain for an hour because the facial recognition couldn't detect a smile on my soaking wet, miserable face. 50. I opened the bathroom cabinet to look for floss and found a gallon Ziploc bag stuffed with wet hair. My roommate had been collecting every single strand from the shower drain for 6 months instead of throwing it away. When I screamed, she ran in and grabbed the bag protectively, claiming it was for a felting project she saw on Pinterest. I moved out before I could see the final result of that nightmare sculpture. 51. An alarm clock sound is annoying, but physically shaking the floorboards is a violation of the Geneva Convention. My roommate installed an industrial subwoofer directly under his bed to wake himself up with heavy bass music. At 6 in the morning, the entire apartment vibrates like we are inside a jet engine. He says he needs to feel the noise to wake up, while I just need my teeth to stop rattling. 52. I poured a bowl of cereal and took a bite, only to realize the milk was actually cloudy tap water. My roommate had finished my expensive almond milk and refilled the carton with sink water to make it look full so he wouldn't get caught. When I confronted him, he shrugged and said, "It looked full to me," as if I wouldn't notice the difference between creamy vanilla nut milk and lukewarm pipe water. 53. Living in our apartment felt like living in a commercial meat locker because my roommate loved the cold. He kept the thermostat at 50 degrees and walked around wearing a heavy winter parka and a beanie inside the living room. He insisted that cold air preserves your youth, but the only thing it preserved was my absolute hatred for him as I watched Netflix while shivering under 3 blankets. 54. I opened the dishwasher to unload clean plates and was hit by the smell of hot steamed fish. My roommate was cooking a whole salmon wrapped in foil on the top rack alongside our dirty dishes. He claimed the steam cycle poached the fish perfectly and saved energy on using the oven. Now, every single glass and ceramic plate we own smells permanently like lemon pepper and low-tide ocean. 55. A roll of red duct tape appeared on the floor, marking a strict border around his bedroom door. He declared his room a sovereign nation and told me I needed a visa to enter or ask him a question. He refused to follow house rules because they didn't apply to his independent territory. Ironically, his new country still relied heavily on my Wi-Fi password and the electricity I paid for. 56. The kitchen counter turned into a rotting science experiment because he wanted to start indoor composting. He piled banana peels, apple cores, and eggshells directly onto the granite without a bin. He insisted the mess was turning into rich soil for his non-existent garden. In reality, it was just turning into a breeding ground for a massive swarm of fruit flies that took over the entire house. 57. A massive hole appeared in the living room drywall, roughly the size of a human fist. My roommate had lost a ranked match in FIFA and decided the wall was the enemy. He tried to cover it up with a poster held up by Scotch tape, but the draft coming through the hole gave it away. He blamed the server lag for his outburst, but the landlord blamed our security deposit. 58. I came home to total darkness because my roommate had unscrewed every single light bulb in the common areas. He claimed that artificial light calcified the pineal gland and blocked his third eye from opening. We had to navigate the hallway using cell phone flashlights like we were exploring a cave. I stubbed my toe on the coffee table 3 times before I finally went out and bought my own secret stash of bulbs. 59. Our coat closet was commandeered and lined with old mattresses because my roommate decided to become a SoundCloud rapper. He spent hours in there screaming unintelligible lyrics into a cheap microphone while I was trying to study. He called it his vocal booth, but the soundproofing was terrible. I heard every single mumbled rhyme about money and cars that he definitely did not have. 60. The kitchen floor became a permanent slip and slide because my roommate bought a commercial deep fryer. He started frying everything from candy bars to entire blocks of cheese, leaving a fine mist of grease on every surface. He refused to turn on the exhaust fan because it was too loud. Walking to the fridge became a safety hazard, and everything I touched felt like it had been dipped in vegetable oil. 61. I walked into the living room to find it completely empty, with my television and bookshelf missing. My roommate had gone on a minimalist kick while I was at work and threw away my furniture. He sat on the floor in a lotus position and told me that material items spark distraction. He threw away appliances he didn't even own, just to clear his own mental clutter. 62. A strange hissing sound from the top of the refrigerator made me look up and lock eyes with a wild raccoon. My roommate had found it eating trash outside and lured it into the apartment with peanut butter. He named it Bandit and insisted it was domesticated because it let him touch its tail once. I locked myself in my room while Bandit raided the pantry and destroyed our cereal supply. Eurosaurus 63. I bit into a slice of pizza and pulled out a long human hair that definitely did not belong to me. It turned out my roommate was running an unlicensed barbershop in our living room to make extra cash. There were little snippets of strangers' hair embedded in the sofa cushions, the carpet, and apparently my dinner. He told me to chill out because the hair was freshly washed before he cut it. 64. I walked in to find a grilled cheese sandwich wrapped in foil and wedged behind the steam radiator. My roommate was cooking his dinner on the heater because he didn't want to use the expensive gas from the stove. The entire apartment smelled like burning cheese and old dust. He offered me a bite and claimed that slow-cooked radiator heat gave the bread a crispier texture than a frying pan. 65. He taped black electrical tape over every single LED light in the house, including the microwave clock and the router lights. He claimed that the tiny red dots were government surveillance eyes spying on his thoughts. I couldn't heat up a burrito without peeling off layers of tape to see the buttons. He called me a sheep for wanting to know what time it was in my own kitchen. 66. Our living room started looking like a Department of Transportation warehouse because my roommate had a kleptomania problem with street signs. He dragged a full-sized stop sign, 3 traffic cones, and a heavy concrete barrier into our hallway. He claimed they were modern art installations, but I claimed they were felonies. We eventually had to call the city to come pick up their property before we got raided. 67. Walking to the kitchen required a helmet because my roommate treated the furniture like a hardcore parkour course. He refused to step on the floor because he was playing a permanent game of The Floor is Lava. I would be watching TV and suddenly see him fly over my head from the sofa to the recliner. He broke the coffee table in half and blamed the wood quality instead of his questionable jumping skills. 68. I went to use the bathroom in the middle of the night and fell directly into the porcelain bowl because the seat was missing. My roommate had unscrewed it and hidden it in his closet. He had read an article about natural squatting postures and decided the toilet seat was an unnatural invention that blocked our flow. He told me to just hover and work on my quad strength. 69. Breaking a lease usually costs money, but staging a fake dramatic exit is apparently free. We found a solemn note on the kitchen table claiming he had entered witness protection, and his room was empty. We panicked and almost called everyone until I saw him 3 hours later sipping a margarita at a bar down the street. He admitted he just wanted to move in with his girlfriend and chose theater instead of an adult conversation. In the comments, tell your worst roommate story in detail. What they did, the exact moment you realized you were living in a circus, and how it ended. And if you stayed silent and just suffered, admit why, because that's the part everyone's dying to hear. Hit like if this gave you flashbacks, and subscribe for more chaos that makes your life look suspiciously normal.